What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York, calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we got John of Blackstone Cherry. Thank you for your time today, man. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Yep. So, the newest album is The Human Condition, coming out in a few weeks. Do you just want to talk about, like, how the making of this album was in terms of, like, the songwriting and the recording and all that fun stuff?
Yeah, we were touring a lot in 2019, which I guess it's a good thing we did. We toured a whole bunch in 2019, so we came up with a few ideas here and there on the road, but not a whole lot of writing. When we started talking about the new record, we all started honestly going back in our minds to a lot of older songs that had never had the opportunity, you know, because the label didn't like it or whatever, and we all knew that they were massive songs, but, you know, labels are sometimes too smart for their own britches, we'll say that.
Mm-hmm.
So we dug up a bunch of older songs and kind of dusted them off and revamped them and all that, and mixed them in. I'd say we're about a 50-50 record. Half of them are old songs. You know, a lot of the you know, my friends, of course, I play the new stuff for to kind of get a feel of what they think about it off of, you know, and a lot of them, a lot of their favorite stuff is the old stuff, you know. There's a couple of the newer songs that they're like, yeah, that's my favorite, but, you know, there's a lot of the old stuff that really stands up. So I think we made the right move in doing it. When we recorded, I actually built a studio in Sulphur Well, Kentucky. It's about 20 minutes from my house. And why are you going to go somewhere else when you own a studio, right?
Right.
So we went there, and Jordan Westfall, our monitor engineer, he's one of my partners in the studio, and Mark Owens is my other guy. So Mark second engineered, Jordan was first engineer, and we gave him the executive producer's credit because he really came swinging. The three of us just kind of put our ears together and kind of discussed how we were going to get the sonics for this album, and then we started talking, you know, the band really started talking and getting involved heavily on it. We set up drums 4 different times, mic'd them up different ways, recorded them, tried different things and all that, and just kept on hammering at it until we finally landed on, oddly enough, the first drum kit we had set up. So we did all this extra work just to come right back to where we started.
Isn't that the best? Isn't that always the best?
It's the greatest when you work for 4 days and you realize that you were done in the first half hour.
and imagine now with the older songs that you're bringing back on this new album, imagine if they end up being like the biggest hit you guys ever had.
Oh, it'll be great.
What I'm curious about is that because in between Family Tree and The Human Condition, you also release the Back to Blues EP. So do you consider this like maybe a continuation of what we heard on the Back to Blues EPs, or is this more of the follow-up to Family Tree?
No, I wouldn't really consider it a follow-up to anything. It's just the next chapter for Blackstone Cherry. The blues EPs, you know, we did Black to Blues between Kentucky and Family Tree, and you know, we were sitting there kind of touring and all that, and kind of missing the studio environment and everything, so we were like, hey, let's go record another blues EP. So we went and did that and kind of sat on it for a little while, released it as a, hey, we're going to tide you over till the next studio album kind of thing, and it worked out really well. You know, both of those blues EPs have been widely accepted and a much larger success than any of us could have ever imagined, because, I mean, they're extremely low budget. We just go in for 2 or 3 days and talk about blues and record. We just jam on random stuff. It's
almost kind of like a GNR Live sort of thing, right?
Kind of, yeah. It all just kind of unfolds on its own, you know? We're not spending a bunch of heavy production dollars and all of that on it. We're just going in and being ourselves and hanging out and talking about music and playing. It's really all it comes down to. And they've been, you know, extremely successful, especially considering what they are, you know? But no, our whole thing since day one has always been never release the same record twice.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Family Tree is far removed from what the Human Condition is, and Kentucky far removed from Family Tree, and so on. It just keeps moving like that. With Family Tree, we were all kind of in this jam band kind of mindset, where we were listening to a lot of Allman Brothers and Government Mule, Fish, that kind of stuff, old 70s classic rock and everything. So we wanted to make a record that allowed us to kind of stretch our legs a bit musically.
Mm-hmm.
So we did. That's why we did Family Tree the way we did. And got a lot of great songs out of it that will be in our set for eternity until, one of us croaks, and that's it.
Look into the bright days ahead.
Right.
Well, like, being that there are some older songs on this new album, like, are they like leftovers from Magic Mountain? Or are they left over from Kentucky? Like, would people maybe be able to tell like which songs were maybe written earlier than some of the newer material?
I really doubt it, to be honest, because half of us honestly can't even keep it straight as to when we wrote what. But, like, I'll give you an example. Ringing in My Head, which is probably the most perfect song for the times that we're in right now, okay, with the pandemic and all that. We wrote that song about 4.5 years ago.
Oh, wow.
It was meant to be for the Family Tree cycle. But we wrote a bunch, in that time, and it obviously just didn't fit that record, so we held on to it.
Okay. Do you think that maybe these two singles that you released, Ringing in My Head and Again, could serve as maybe like a good representation of what the entirety of the Human Condition will sound like?
Sonically, yeah. As far as the songwriting and direction and all that, not 100%. We got a couple ballads on here, and we got, our band really calls it like skank rock, that's straight ahead, like just bash your head up against a brick wall kind of thing. We got a couple tunes on here that are like that, So, I mean, it's got every little shade and color that you've come to expect from Blackstone Cherry, for sure. But, more so footed in that hard rock world.
Yeah, I feel like you have kind of like the best of both worlds, because I feel like you bring like a classic rock sound that we've all known and loved from, classic rock bands, but I feel like you bring such a modern charm to it as well, where like I feel like people who were listening to, Guns N' Roses and, even Led Zeppelin could appreciate you guys, but people who are getting into rock through bands you would hear on Octane, like maybe 3 Days Grace or Fozzy or Nothing More, could also appreciate your sound as well.
I appreciate that. Honestly, a lot of that comes down to the fact that we were kids listening to Seven Dust and Stereo Mud and all kinds of like modern rock of the time, but we were also heavily influenced by Led Zeppelin and the Beatles and Mott the Hoople, Cactus, and Blue Cheer, I mean, you name it, but also like Muddy Waters, B.B. King, Robert Johnson, Jimmy Dickens, freaking, you name it, Waylon Jennings. I mean, everything from blues, old blues, like Delta blues, old country, hard rock. We were listening to literally everything. I mean, even today, I'll listen to, believe it or not, I'll listen to Imagine Dragons and One Republic quicker than I'll listen to pretty much anything else.
To each his own. To each his own. And I think that helps keep it interesting for you guys, because I feel like Blackstone Cherry does have like a sound that, people will, whether you're listening to Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea or the 26 Self-Titled or Kentucky, I feel like people will always appreciate you guys, but there is also plenty of room for experimentation as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. You never stop growing. If you do, then you've given up. The only band I think that has ever existed that's allowed to release the same record multiple times and get away with it beautifully is AC/DC.
Yep. Well, death metal bands too, like Cannibal Corpse or Morbid Angel or Obituary. I feel like they could kind of get away with it, but that it's death metal. I mean, there's really like you stick with that. I feel like you guys have the best of both worlds. You're able to experiment without being all over the place, but you're also able to kind of like maintain a style and a sound without being repetitive.
Right. We're kind of like genre fluid.
That should be the name of this album. I'm not even kidding. Like, why? Why did you not name it that?
I don't know, because I just came up with it.
You might have something. I hope you have a pen and paper. Write that down and give me the credit. I'm kidding.
All right, we'll do.
But what I find unique is that, like, do you ever enter the songwriting process with like a preconceived idea, or is there tend to be like a lot of improvising involved?
Honestly, it's a little bit of everything. Sometimes, we'll come up with a riff, and the riff will kind of dictate what the song is. Other times, we'll have a title idea, and then our brains are in the title land, so that kind of influences what the riff becomes. Other times, a whole verse worth of lyrics will just kind of smack somebody in the face, and we'll start working in that direction. It all just kind of depends on how it happens. Inspiration can strike at any time.
Yeah, and I'd imagine it sometimes strikes at the most inconvenient times as well, right?
For me, most usually it's when I'm in my driver's seat, alone in my vehicle, heading down the road.
Yep. I've always said...
That's when I'm going, shit, where's my phone?
Yeah, that's why I've always said it should be illegal for artists to become pilots, because I don't want a pilot to get inspired as they're landing the plane on the tarmac,
Oh, poor Bruce Dickinson, come on now.
Yeah, I know. I'm just like, oh God, I hope like he's not thinking of ideas as he's like, all right, we're gonna be we're gonna circle over the airport for the next hour while I get this vocal melody down.
Right.
That would be pretty interesting though. That'll be a flight you don't forget.
That's true. It would be the one you're like, Jesus, would you please land this plane?
Please.
I know you've been on those. We all have.
Oh yeah, especially sitting on a tarmac for 4.5 hours on a layover in Texas. That was fun.
Oh, I did that in Atlanta one time.
Good times, right?
Yep, just got back from Europe, landed in Atlanta, had to run across the airport to get on the plane, then we sat on the tarmac for like 2.5, 3 hours before we could finally take off to head to Nashville to get home.
All right, well, I have you beat because my plane never took off. We had to deplane.
Oh, God.
Yep.
That's no good.
Yeah.
I had to drive from New York City home one time because they grounded all flights globally because there were solar flares or something going on that particular day. We had just got back from Europe. They grounded all flights globally for the rest of the evening because solar flares were messing with GPS coordinates and all kinds of jazz, so the planes couldn't fly. So they grounded us all, so we went and rented 2 SUVs and drove from New York City to Edmonton, Glasgow area, Kentucky, overnight. It was awful.
How long was that drive?
About 16 hours.
Oh, lovely, lovely. I hope did that inspire any songwriting?
It inspired a lot of sleeping, I'll tell you that.
All right, fair enough. Better than nothing. Now, do you look at the entirety of the Black Stone Cherry catalog from, the self-titled album to The Human Condition as almost kind of like a timeline or a self-portrait of who you and the band are at that particular time, in a way?
That's a good question. I look at it, honestly, more like a music fan looks at an era. You know how you'll hear that song and it, like, takes you back to, like, high school?
Yeah.
That's what the records do for me that we've put out. I'll hear the record and I can start remembering that touring cycle and that recording process and that writing process and so on. It just kind of takes me back in time. It's not necessarily like an all-encompassing kind of thing because, like we've kind of established, it's a living, breathing, organic thing, being a songwriter, a musician. So it's always evolving and changing and becoming something different as time goes on. So I don't think it's like a thing that says, hey, this is what we are entirely. I think it's more of this is who we were then.
Yeah, and it's funny too because like I've always said that art is life in itself because it grows, it develops, and it could eventually die as well. Like I'd imagine you look at some of your earlier work with maybe a different perspective than what you have done when you first wrote it, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can only be 20 once. So I mean, people that fell in love with that first record, they're like, yeah, we want that, like, because I mean, our first record, a lot of people compared us to a lot of like old classic punk bands and stuff because we were more of like a thrash rock kind of thing. A lot of people compare us to that, and they're never going to get that again because that's not us. That's who we were then. I was 21 when we recorded that. Ben and I think Ben was 19. Chris and John were 20.
Wow.
By the time it came out, we had 3 21-year-olds and 1 20-year-old.
And art matures and you grow. I feel like what the most beautiful thing about a band and music is that it grows with you. You change your perception on it, and it opens up your new ideas to new experiences.
Yeah, it's like the Harry Potter films. The first one was for kids, and the last was for grown-ups.
Yep, that's very true. In fact, what's funny is I remember seeing the first Harry Potter when I was like, I was in second grade when the first one came out. I just turned 8 years old, and then I remember like seeing the preview for like the last one, and the ratings were getting more and more age restricted and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, that's a very good way of putting it. So it's fair to say that the Human Condition is your most explicit record at this point too, right?
We've always been really conscious to make sure that we don't put any explicit content really on anything. We've gotten a little edgy, of course, here and there. Blame It on the Boom Boom isn't exactly the most G-rated thing ever.
I was about to bring that up.
But we try to keep it to where it, stuff like that is written, what's the word I'm looking for? Creatively enough to where it can kind of go over the head of the little ones. So it doesn't, there's no big F-bombs or anything like that in any of our songs because, we want kids to be able to listen to our music. We grew up listening to music, so we want kids to be able to do the same with ours.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like your songs, have a lot of different vibes as well in it. Like, Blame It on the Boom Boom is a straight up party song. I listened to that on the way to plenty of parties when I was in high school. But like, you also write ballads, you write elements, songs that could be, a little bit more, for lack of better words, serious than others. So is it fair to say that maybe like a lot of these songs are representations of like a moment of time or like an emotion that you guys are all feeling?
Yeah, pretty much. It doesn't even have to be all of us. It just has to be one of us, I think that's one of the reasons, I said this in an interview the other day, one of the reasons why we are able to release a completely different record every time is because we can cover the same subject matter from 4 different perspectives at different ages of life, always, no matter what, because all 4 of us write, Chris, for example, has gone through a full-blown break, with depression and anxiety and all that. He literally just cracked. I was in the hotel room with him whenever it just finally came to a head. We were on a press tour in England, and he and I always roomed together. So, I was with him firsthand whenever it started. We were driving back and forth from that hotel to different press outlets and so on throughout that week. Some of the stuff was cross-country, so kind of everybody in the band and our tour manager at the time kind of got the information very close around the same time, but Chris's experience with that is direct. Mine was directly beside him. Mm-hmm. John, Fred, and Ben was like the day after, so we all had a different thing happen with us during that experience. So anytime we write a song about depression, we all have our own perspective. So that kind of allows us to be to hit it from a different angle every time.
Yeah, and I think either way, it's something that so many people go through, and everybody has different experiences with it and different solutions of handling it. I think by approaching that from different angles, you'll be able to relate to a lot of people who could have experienced this with multiple ways. Thank you for doing that.
No, absolutely. Since that happened with Chris, it's kind of been a forefront thing for us to make sure that we're kind of doing our part for mental health, in general. But that same concept works for all songwriting. You know, it doesn't matter if we're writing a love song or a song about, you know, like things my father said, for example. You know, none of us have lost our dads as of right now. You know, obviously we hadn't lost them at that point. So we were all kind of writing from like perspective of losing grandfathers or the idea of losing our dad, you know, and so on. So it's all real generalized to the point that it's all from our individual perspectives, you know. So every song we do is going to have a little bit of a different twist because, you know, a different guy might have the most ideas, which kind of has him taking the lead in that particular track.
And do you feel that sometimes these concepts or these subject matters could help dictate the whole composition in itself, or do you find it maybe easier for the band, for Chris to either come up with lyrics or for all of you guys to come up with a subject matter after there's kind of like an arrangement already in place?
It all happens in 100 different ways. We all write lyrics. We all write melody. I mean, hell, we all write each other's parts. You know, when we did this record, we recorded guitar and bass for all the songs first. Not perfectly, but, you know, in perfect time, and here's the shape. And then we had John Fred go in and play drums to where we didn't have to focus on playing guitar and bass. We could focus on making sure he was playing stuff that complemented the song. Mm-hmm. You know?
So you sing...
Chris will holler melodies out at me when I'm playing bass, you know. John Fred will do the same thing. You know, there's times Chris will be playing, we'll be working on a lead part, and I'll say, hey, man, you need to work up the neck a little bit faster here, you know, whatever. Because, I mean, that's part of producing, though. We're kind of guiding and telling each other what we think the song needs to be, and as it unfolds, it kind of starts telling us what it needs to be.
Yeah, it seems like you guys. It seems like you don't write the songs. You maybe lay down the foundation, and the songs kind of write themselves, and you're like their humble guide in a way.
Basically, yeah, that's a great way of putting it. When we write songs, we'll get like 90% of the lyrics together, and maybe 60% of what the music is. Basically just chord changes and things like that. But as far as like really solidifying the riffs and the way it all works together and concreting it all, we kind of do that in the studio.
Yeah. And when it comes to, bringing that material from the studio and to putting it in a live presence, because in the end, like, I feel like your songs do capture a moment, which is awesome. I think when a song captures a moment, that's like one of the best things a song could do. But, then you're taking that material and you're just replicating it into a live setting. So do you channel a similar energy into your live presence as you do in the studio, or is it like a separate art altogether?
It's a completely different ballgame, man. Even like Ringing in My Head, for example, after that first verse, it goes into a pre-chorus, which is basically the chorus just kind of manipulated in a slightly different way. When we did that in the studio, Chris sang that pre-chorus, and then he sang the entire chorus, those main lines. In a live setting, as we discovered the other day as we were rehearsing and getting stuff together for the live stream thing that we're doing on the 30th of this month, we discovered that Chris can't do all that all in one shot. It's almost impossible. So now Chris sings the verse, I sing the entire pre-chorus, Chris comes into the first line of the chorus, and then we basically do like a ZZ Top back and forth call and answer thing, where Chris sings the first line, I sing the second, he sings the third, I sing the fourth, and so on. We just bounce back and forth through the chorus.
Wow. What you should do is to really, people's heads will melt. Being that you guys write each other's parts all the time, you guys should just go on stage and everybody takes like a different position. Like Chris will be behind the drum kit. Yeah,
we've actually done that before. Chris will swap with John Fred. He'll go play drums. John Fred will come up and sing. Ben and I kind of stick in our worlds because if me and him swapped and those two swapped as well, it'd be a train wreck.
Well, never say never.
Keeping the fort down.
Never say never. Maybe it'll be the best thing you've ever done.
Maybe. Never know.
Yep, you guys take risks all the time, and I think that's what makes Black Stone Cherry a great band, so never stop taking risks.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yep. So before we go, I want to thank you so much again for your time. Just obviously, thanks to a certain virus that shall not be named, obviously shows aren't happening at the moment. But I'd imagine when all this is eventually over, we'll be seeing Black Stone Cherry on the road quite a bit, right?
Oh, absolutely. We're so looking forward to being done with all this crap.
As everybody else is, I'm sure. Is there any maybe live stream performances that we could be expecting as well?
Yeah, we have a live stream performance coming out the 30th of October. It's the day the album comes out. We have a live stream going out same day. It will be available the 30th, 31st, and 1st of November. Then we have a couple socially distanced shows coming up as well. First of which is this coming Friday in our hometown area here. It's sold out in about half an hour. But they're doing that in a pod setting, so it's 6 people per pod, and each pod has to be a family, 6 or less.
Yeah, well,
so on. It's interesting.
It'll be unique. I'm liking how you experiment with your sound and you're experimenting with the live presence. But thank you so much, John. Everybody, we are here with John of Black Stone Cherry. Be sure to pick up the new album, The Human Condition, coming out very soon. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.